take-home mobility exercises that are personal favorites of mine, whether it be for clients that I've trained or training, or personally, or just for injury prevention for patients that I see here. So it's not necessarily for when you're in pain, but more so, again, prevention or just trying to keep your joints nice and healthy. Guys, it's called couch stretch. Obviously we don't have a couch in the clinic, so I'm gonna go ahead and get down on a chair. So usually I'll recommend like a pillow, some type of pad on the knee. Doesn't always feel great. And then my next instruction is basically depending on how much tightness you feel personally, will determine like how far back you want this pad. So if you're really tight, you might like maybe just in the lunge position might be good enough. So a little bit of a progression. We'll swing up here, and then I don't ever want to be cranking into extension. So to make this more difficult or feel a better stretch, I actually want to shift the pelvis back. And then the last cue I give is actually squeeze the glute. That's going to turn off the anterior chain. So we would call that reciprocal inhibition. By activating this side, is going to turn off basically the quad, the hip flexors, and then from here you can do all different types of variation, whether I'm going in different vectors this way, or even bringing it up and getting a little more of the hip flexors involved. Last thing is just to breathe. So a famous quote by Greg Cook, if you can't breathe in the position, you don't own the position. So that's the most important component is if I feel like I'm getting a really good stretch, but I'm like hyperventilating, you want to reassess like how you're breathing and try and own it. Well, a lot of times you can relate pain to a nearby joint. Very often the actual joint isn't the issue, it's overcompensating for something else. So in the case of a low back, sometimes it's actually a hip mobility issue, or again, just in general feels really good after a day of sitting. So I like the elevated pitch and pose for this. Essentially, again, this is going to be tough for some people, so you might have to do it on the floor. But basically what I do, coming into this position, and you don't necessarily want to slouch. I always try to keep a neutral spine, and then I use the word like scan, so you're just going to come through and search different parts of the hips that might feel extra tight. Again, I'm going to breathe into it and really sink. And then the last part is, if you want to add another progression, is actually sinking even further down. So sometimes I'll even treat in this position, so adding like a little bit of a mobility with some passive therapies. And then again, just trying to scan different areas. I'll hold for around 2 minutes. So next one involves a lacrosse ball. Tennis ball will suffice. I just like how it's a little more dense. We're going to give our feet some love, like who doesn't love a good foot rub. So you don't have to have necessarily plantar fascia or something to have this feel pretty therapeutic. It's kind of down another rabbit hole in itself, as if it's even plantar fascia to begin with. But essentially, our shoes desensitize our feet. We're essentially made to be barefoot, which is kind of the craze of all the barefoot training and barefoot running and stuff. So same type of concept as what the rest of the mobility. I want to go through, roll around. If I find a spot, kind of sink into it, breathe, and then move on. You don't want to like beat up on the tissue necessarily, but you also like do want to get some benefit from it. So it's kind of like Goldilocks. You don't want too little or not enough, but just right. But yeah, I'll like legitimately just do notes and roll my feet on this. It just feels really good at the very least, whether you think it like helps or not. So roll it around, perfect. All right, so next one involves a foam roller. We're going to be treating some of the thoracic spine, which is like the middle spine. Again, if we're here all day and we don't get any of the opposite direction, that can eventually cause pain. So again, this is kind of preventative. We're going to try and open everything up. So you use this, essentially just help out the top side hip. I'm going to breathe into my stomach. I'm going to come here and then essentially open up. And a lot of times you can almost like self-cavitate. Just feels really good. And breathing in
last little breath out, you'll just get a little further on the in range. Coming back through. And I usually like to travel my head where I want to go, because you can actually just get the whole spine involved, as opposed to if I'm looking here, I might be able to look a little further, which I can. Perfect.
So we addressed, thoracic spine. Now let's get with the lower spine, some love. Again, if I'm here all day, you could really benefit potentially from getting some extension. It's just like a yin and yang scenario, which I'll tell my patients is the imbalance in the amount of flexion that you're getting all day doesn't amount to the amount of extension. So this will look really familiar to our yogis out there. We're gonna come down, have the hands near your chest. Try and keep your pelvis on the ground and then push up through there. Breathe out at the top, get a little extra extension, and then come back down. So if you can only get like here while keeping your pelvis down, that's fine. But eventually the goal should be to get enough spinal mobility where you can come up here and basically hinge right at the lumbar spine. So obviously that can be, pretty ridiculous if you're in your office. You don't want to just hop on the ground if your, back starts to feel tight. So I'll give this like analogy. If you're like, if my patients are on a long trip or something, I don't want them coming back in pain, but still want them to be able to do their exercises. Maybe they stop at a gas station and essentially can do these standing. So I'm going to put my fist right on my pelvis, and I'm going to push forward. So I usually will try and tell people find a kegel on the wall and then go a little bit past, and then back forward. So we're really only going to change mobility if we're going past an area where we're kind of not comfortable. It should never hurt, but you're not going to necessarily change the mobility of like whatever tissue you work on, whether it's back or hips, anything else I've shown, if we're kind of getting past a point where we haven't been before. So you might wonder, like, how often should I do these? And it's really up to you. If you have a problem or a complaint area that's maybe in pain, you might want to come in and see us. If it's more preventative, then you just would at least do these periodically throughout the week. Each one of them is around 2 minutes, I say. That would be the complete mobility I just showed you. You could get done in 10 minutes and really feel pretty good. Just if you're feeling like an overall sensation of tightness or need some motion in your life. But anyway, like, subscribe, ICT Muscle Joint Clinic. I appreciate you watching.